How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and today I'm gonna burn the midnight oil to get my cheap Lambo ready for its first dyno run. I'm not nervous, not at all. So for those of you new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys like it, and if you like this video, consider subscribing. This, of course, is my 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider. It has a twin turbo kit, it has a 6-speed manual transmission, and it makes all the right noises. But today is gonna be a mad dash to get this thing on its first dyno run. Now, I am a little bit nervous. I'm actually very, very nervous because I've never had a car of mine on a dyno with this much custom work to it. I don't know what it's gonna do, but I have to make sure that it performs well and also looks good on camera. Speaking of looking good on camera, this whole situation is not working, so we have to change it. Which gives me an opportunity to introduce today's sponsor, Dollar Shave Club, also known as the only company that can turn this to this with only $5. So we all have our daily routines: getting up, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, working on your fire-damaged Lamborghini. One thing I bet you don't know is the fact that Dollar Shave Club has all your grooming products, actually all the grooming products you'll ever need, including toothpaste, hair products, body wash, and everything that makes you look and smell clean. And if you're like me, ready to get dirty again. Do you like cheap things? Well, I assume you do, because otherwise you wouldn't have clicked on this video, but I love cheap things, and that's why I was really happy when I found out that Dollar Shave Club is basically giving away their daily essential starter set to new members for only $5. So here's what you get in your very first box. You get your Dr. Carver's Easy Shave Butter. This stuff works miracles. I love this stuff. You also get the body cleanser, which keeps you fresh and keeps you clean. And you have your One Wipe Charlie's butt wipes. And for those of you who don't know about this, you gotta get on it because it is good. It's good. You'll also get their executive razor, which has a premium weighted handle. This actually has a really good heft to it. It feels really good in your hand. And a full cassette of cartridges. Now, replacement cartridges are just a few bucks a month after your first box. So if you want to start looking right and get your $5 daily essential starter set, you can go to dollarshaveclub.com/TAV. That is dollarshaveclub.com/TAV. All right, so let's start back here at the business end of the car. Now, for those of you who have watched my last video, my quick update video, will know that I was working back here because my turbo had an oil leak in it, meaning that the oil from the return line was actually backing up into the exhaust housing and coming out of the exhaust and burning up and giving me really nasty plumes of blue smoke. So what I did to fix the problem was just have it, well, run like it should. This oil return line right here that's going across the end of my transmission here, this is a gravity feed system, meaning that when the oil comes out of the turbo, it comes into this feed right here at around 40 or so PSI, and then it goes down, it gets spun up by the turbo, there's bearings in there, and there's a lot of stuff that happens. It also gets cooled a little bit by the oil, but then it comes out at a lower pressure, at a much lower pressure, and that goes into the sump. Now the sump is, well, it's in the middle of the car, and as this is a dry sump system, it doesn't have a traditional wet sump where the oil return line has to go on top of the oil. I actually have this going into the drain plug because that's where the pickup is for the oil pump. Now the interesting bit here is that I just made sure that everything was on a glide slope down. Everything was just sloping downwards and there was no kinks. The old system, the old setup that I had, it basically went like this. It went down, it like kind of went down like this across the transmission, and then I had to go up a few inches, and that up meant that there would be a pool of oil that basically couldn't get any leverage, it couldn't get sucked up into the engine, even if there was some suction. So that turbo was fine, this turbo was getting some oil seepage. This should fix it. I also put some DEI wrap on here just to make sure that the really hot exhaust doesn't interfere with the oil, because if the lines burst for some reason, that could be a real disaster situation, but that's not gonna happen with this wrap, and I wrapped both those lines. And as you can see, I also drained the oil because, well, I think the oil for this engine was a little bit too thin. I used 5W40, which the car calls for, but this is a built engine, and I know built engines, especially with turbocharged applications, I know the turbochargers usually thin out the oil a little bit, so you want a thicker oil. So for that, I have a 20W60, and I'm gonna show you how I put that in right now. So instead of using any old oil that you'd find at an AutoZone, or maybe even getting something special like a Castrol TWS or a Liqui Moly, I decided to go all out because this car, well, this car is gonna have a lot of power, and I've never had an exotic car like this before, so why not splurge on some engine oil? Now this is actually the most expensive oil I'll ever buy, or I have ever bought in my life. This is Motul 20W60 300V Le Mans oil. This is, well, this is the oil that they use in Le Mans race cars. And a lot of people have asked me, because I've mentioned that I'm gonna use this oil, a lot of people have asked me, why are you using this oil in your car? Well, I'm gonna be putting down a bit more power than what the guys in Le Mans use. I wanna make sure that this car can sustain high revs and high power for as long as possible, because this oil is really good at that. It doesn't break down when the pressures get really high. Now, this doesn't have as many detergents as the regular oils do, like the AutoZone brands, so I can't really do the 5,000 or 7,000 mile oil changes, but it should be okay for my purposes. Now, this, I'll have to change out the oil, I'd say every 2,000 miles or thereabouts. I'll check the oil, make sure it doesn't get too dark or anything like that, but this should provide a ton of protection for my oily bits and all my spinny bits back there. So what I have to do for this car is, instead of putting it into the engine like you would in a normal car, I have to put it in the oil tank. This has a dry sump system, and the oil tank is separate from the engine. The oil tank is right back here. All I have to do is pull the dipstick. Okay, so the dipstick has been modified from stock. I haven't modified it. This was actually modified by the shop that did the previous iteration of this twin turbo kit. Now, the dipstick actually is supposed to sit up here, and you're supposed to get the engine oil out here, and the dipstick is supposed to be a lot longer. But what they did is, since the intercooler is sitting up here, it would have fouled on the intercooler, so they just cut it all the way down there, and then they just cut the dipstick and made two little notches. I have no idea if these notches are correct in where their oil level is supposed to be, but that's the only thing I have to go by. And it's not like I can just buy a stock piece for this, because this is, after all, an aftermarket edition. It's not even aftermarket, it's just completely custom, hopefully not botched edition. So I'm gonna take a regular old funnel, and I'm just gonna funnel in some oil. Now, the procedure for this car to introduce oil into the system is you have to put in 6 liters of oil into the oil tank, then turn on the car, then wait till your oil pressure gets up to a reasonable level, then add 4 more quarts. Now, I am really concerned with this thing being either overfilled or underfilled, so I'm going to add 3 quarts, and then we'll see where we're at with the level. I'm not sure how much is still left in the system. I have drained the entire 10-quart system, but who knows? There might be some odds and ends still floating around back there. And this stuff is, if you want to talk about expensive, this is a 2-liter container, and this cost me around 35 bucks. And to do a 10-liter system, well, you guys can do the math. It's not cheap. What's cool about Motul is that they have this cool little spout. So you just pull it out, and it makes pouring a lot easier, even though it's not the easiest thing in the world to begin with. Oh yeah, that is nice and thick. So this oil has consistency like honey. It's crazy, crazy thick. So getting through the strainer on my funnel here, it's gonna take a little while. So I think with the magic of editing, you guys will see the results in 3, 2, 1, and we're done. That was a lot of fun, actually. You guys missed out on a lot, because my idea of fun is watching oil drain slowly into a tank over many, many minutes. In any case, I'm going to turn on the car, and we're gonna make sure that the oil pressure is up to snuff. Now, I have changed the oil filter. I had a video about this a while back where I took a look at the old oil filter and I put in a new one. I did put in a new one again. Those are around 80 bucks, so this is actually a pretty expensive oil change. But even with these exotic oils and really expensive parts, it's actually a lot cheaper to do it yourself than to go to the Lamborghini dealer, because, well, I'll make a video about that in the future. But let's get this thing started. pressure is around 5 bar, which is actually pretty high. It's going down to 4 bar and going down from there. It's actually staying at around 4 bar. Oh, that's who needs a lot of work. Good thing we're going to the dyno. All right, so now that we have 10 quarts in there, or thereabouts, I actually put in 9. I want to take a measurement of, well, our modified dipstick here. So take a look at this dipstick. You see 2 little nubs right here, and that's where the levels are supposed to be. We'll see. I have no idea if this is accurate or not, but this is the only thing I have left to go by. So I'm just going to stick this all the way in there. All right, that's actually not too far off. Good thing I didn't put in too much more. It is actually right in the middle between those 2 nubs. So I'm going to put in just a pinch more oil, and then we should be good to go. And oh yeah, right on the level. I don't know if you can see that, but it is right there, and it is oil is going everywhere. So let me get this dipstick back, and now we can get the car up to temperature. All right, I darkened my camera a little bit just so you guys can see outside. There is a bit of difference between the garage and outside, but you'll be able to see if there's any massive blue plumes of smoke coming out of this car. Now, this car is already warmed up, and you're gonna see a little bit of smoke just because this thing runs really, really rich. And also, I have to burn off whatever residual oil was in there to begin with. So you might see a little bit of smoke coming out the tailpipe, but that's not bad, because the way this was before, basically, it was just huge plumes of smoke, and it was just kind of embarrassing. But let's see what happens. Oh, that's so much better. There's nothing happened. It just all dissipated. Really, really interesting stuff. So it seems like that fix actually did it. That oil return line fix actually fixed our problem. And we shouldn't have a problem going onto the dyno. Actually, scratch that. We will have one issue that we need to solve right now in order for us to go on the dyno. And that is... it still runs really rich. And that is the fact that this is still an all-wheel drive car. Now, the dyno that I'm going to use is Cletus McFarland's dyno. You guys know him, and he has graciously given me some dyno time and access to his tuner, Jeremy. That should be a lot of fun, but his dyno is only well, it's not rear-wheel drive, it's two-wheel drive. I'm not sure if he had any front-wheel drive cars on that dyno. Actually, Boosted Boys was on there. In any case, I digress. This is an all-wheel drive car, but it needs to be rear-wheel drive, and we can convert it really, really easily by doing, well, 2 things, actually 3 things, and all of them involve unbolting. So you are joining me from underneath the car, and it's actually quite warm down here, but you can see that the oil stuff that we installed, it's actually not leaking. It is quite dry, and that goes all the way over here into this T right here. This well, it's not even a T fitting, it's a Y fitting that's done for flow, but it's a Y fitting, and that goes into the oil return lines. And all that stuff is it doesn't seem to have any issues with leaks or anything like that. And I also put a little bit of that DEI stuff right here, just because I don't want it to hit, well, this little angle on the transmission. So this isn't what we have to take off. What we have to take off is further up. We just have to roll up there. Man, this is pretty warm. All right, so here is what we have to do. This is the drive shaft that goes all the way to the front of the car, and in order to make this rear-wheel drive only, we basically have to take this baby off. Now, these are not your regular hex bolts. They're something called triple square nut bolts, and I have a triple square nut bit. You can actually get them at your local auto parts store, or AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts, something like that. So those are really easy to come by, and all I have to do is take these guys off, and then take some off over there, and also take off this center support bearing. It looks like 2 13mm bolts, and this thing should come right out. Hopefully it doesn't hit me in my junk. All right, everyone, take a look at that. So I have the drive shaft out, and here is the, I guess the drive shaft yoke, or the bearing. I'm not sure what this is called. It'll come to me in a second, but I cleaned all the grease out of here just because when the engine's going to be spinning and doing higher RPMs, I don't want axle grease going everywhere. So I still have to do that to the other side, but we are essentially done. So one good thing that comes out of this, well, a few good things that come out of this delete of the front wheel drive system is the fact that when you have just the rear wheel drive engaged, you will have more power because there's less parasitic loss in the engine system. It will also, well, a lot of people have said that this car handles a lot better when it's rear wheel drive only. So I'd like to see that as well, even though with this kind of power, if we're going to be pushing anywhere close to 1,000 horsepower, those tires aren't going to be enough to hold all that power. So I will definitely need all-wheel drive for the long run. But for now, I think rear-wheel drive is just going to be, you know, it's going to be a fun experiment. In any case, this is going to allow us to get on the dyno, and I can't wait. So that's going to be where I end the episode today. And we got a lot of work done. We got properly dirty. I told you we would get dirty. This is going to be a lot of fun on the dyno. Now, I don't know if the car is going to blow up. It's going to be par for the course because we've had a lot of setbacks, and if something happens with the engine, then, you know, something happens with the engine. Hopefully nothing happens with the engine and it makes a ton of power, but who knows? That's the way these things go. So this car is going to go to the dyno in actually a few days, but by the time you see this, it'll already be on the dyno or on its way to the dyno. So I can't wait for that. Very, very nervous. I want all of you to wish me some luck because I think I'm going to need it with this car. So if you'd like to contact me, you can do so at TheRealTavarish. That is Instagram and Twitter. Facebook.com/AskTavarish and AskTavarish@gmail.com is my email, and I do read every single one. You guys have been really good at sending me emails about this car, about my channel, and about anything really. If you'd like to support a really good cause, then you can do so by buying one of my shirts. Now, all of my shirts in my Teespring store in the video description. All the profits from those shirts go to charity every month. This month is going to be the Open Road Foundation. They do a lot of work with vets and kind of introduce them to cars, and it's a very good cause. If you'd like to listen to me talk about cars and other things other than cars, then you can do so at the Wrench Everyday podcast down below. We will be doing a few modifications to that format, but it's going to be good. So go check that out. It's a lot of fun. And until next time, this is me telling you that on cars like this that are ready to put down some serious numbers with no front wheel drive, you guys need to wrench every day.